fans, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And I have yet another Giallo, and I haven't done many at all when it comes to Giallos, but this is probably going to be another rant. And I don't think I've had two rants in a row since I've started this marathon about 40 videos ago, so it's pretty good for Italian films, but this is a Blu-ray that I think just came out last year. It is from Full Moon Pictures, or Features. It is 1972's Naked Girl Murdered in the Park. Now, originally, because I had just picked this up, I think, last week, I had ordered at the store that I go to cheap DVD by Desert Island Pictures, which does like DVD-R bootlegs. But then I saw this was available, so I figured I'd cancel that and pick this up. Now, I had never heard of this film until I had started flipping through the 3-volume encyclopedia of Giallo films. There's also a guy, 1R Xmas 1, on YouTube who has probably the biggest collection I've ever seen of Giallo films and Italian films. And he had a DVD of this. And the title stood out to me because I figured it was going to be another Last House on the Left or House on the Edge of the Park kind of deal, even though it came out 9 years before House on the Edge of the Park. But the title and even the cover, to a certain extent, still kind of reminds me of it. The title is accurate. We do get a naked girl murdered in the park, or if you get the Desert Island DVD, it's naked girl killed in the park. But oddly enough, it's not the case that drives the plot forward, and I'll get into that. Now, it was directed by, and actually I think this is an Italian-Spanish co-production, but it was directed by Alfonso Brescia, if I pronounce that correctly, who's mostly known for westerns and poliziotteschi films. It has 4 writers: Antonio Foss, Gianni Martucci, and Peter and Michael Scarry, and stars Robert Hoffman, P.R. Velasquez, if I pronounce that correctly, Irina Demick, a lot of people that I don't really know except for Adolfo Celli, who is a Bond villain. I think that's how most people know him. But he was also in Who Saw Her Die, and there was one other one, Eye in the Labyrinth. Now, I'm conditioned to, whenever I see Adolfo Celli, regardless of who he is in the movie, he's an automatic red herring for me. And he does it so well. He is easily the best part of this movie. He is the only actor that is not boring, is doing a good job, and that you actually buy. He's the only one whose performance you can actually kind of get behind. Everyone else is either over the top or uninterested, especially the lead, Robert Hoffman. He was incredibly boring. The most interesting thing about him is that in some scenes, he looks like a blonde Riker from Star Trek. The music was done by Carlo Savina, who was actually, while he was recording this score, it was in the same studio at the same time as, what was that composer's name? I always forget it. Nino Rota's score for Godfather. That was being scored. Now, this does have a forgivable runtime of 95 minutes, but up until the 3rd act, this movie drags. And it's a pretty textbook Giallo. even on the back it says a lost Giallo, uncut, remastered. I'm not sure how hard it was to get before this, but there's other Giallos that, Amok. I don't think that has an official release other than Shameless. So yeah, there's not too much about the backstory of this film, but so yeah, what I was going to say about the title is normally if a title is something like this, because the movie, I can't really say that. The whole naked girl that's killed in the park doesn't come in until like 55 minutes into the film. Like, more than halfway. And the investigation has already begun. Because the pre-credit scene is this black and white. We get a mother, a couple kids, and an elderly Nazi soldier putting a bomb together. And we get some stock footage of World War II. It says it's in Berlin in, I think, 45. And then the bomb goes off. We get the opening credits. And then we're in Madrid, 1971 or 2. And the first thing after the credits is we see, like, skeleton, a devil, some bats. It's like a House of Horrors carnival ride. And it's a POV. But then we see the tram car coming out, and it's a guy who's dead. A guy who's been murdered. And he has $1 million with him. That's the case that carries this movie. That's what the whole movie's about. The naked girl murdered in the park is actually a victim, like I said, 55 minutes into the movie. Now, normally, when we have a title like that, like Mom Killed in the Kitchen, that's usually going to be the first death that is the main case or the whole catalyst for the entire film. But Robert Hoffman plays this guy named Chris. He's an inspector who, I guess, goes undercover, but he starts investigating the family because everyone is a weird character. I mean, the daughter, Barbara. Excuse me, not Barbara. Which one was it? They have different personality. Catherine. That's one with the weird name. P.R. Velasquez. Catherine. She's getting weird phone calls, with this whispering voice saying, I know you did it, you're not going to get away with it. There's one scene where that happens, and she sees a black leather jacket guy with some fiber wire or rope. Can't see his face. She faints, but knocks over a bottle, and it breaks. And she notices that, but then when she wakes up, like, the killer doesn't do anything. And the bottle is put back, but then the camera shows us there's a shard of it that was left behind. I'm guessing to drive her crazy. Chris even takes her out on a date because they fall in love, as what happens with Giallo. There's hardly any violence in this, but there's plenty of sex, plenty of lurid sleaze in this. Not only does he take her on a date, but he takes her to the same damn carnival that her dad was killed at a few days ago. But eventually, when the phone calls keep happening, he decides to stay with her at her family's estate, also to help the investigation. We do see him with another inspector, I think at the insurance company, because the dead guy did collect a $1 million life insurance policy. So they have theories about blackmail and all this stuff. Eventually, we meet Adolfo Celli, who I think is another inspector. I thought he was a lawyer or working for the insurance company, but he's involved with the family somehow in that way. There is another inspector that we don't really see outside the office until the end. He has glasses. But so Chris stays with the family at their big mansion. She has a sister named Barbara who's slutty, and then a nutty mom. So slutty and nutty is who you have. Barbara's the sister. Magda is the mother. Barbara likes to seduce the mute gardener, who looks like, you know, great value George Eastman. And Magda likes to drink with the giant portrait of the dead guy and talk to it. And it seems like they didn't have the best relationship, because she does tell Chris eventually that she used to get him drunk so he could leave her alone. The movie tries to set up the gardener as a red herring. And I guess I'll get into spoilers, but before I do, the music is kind of all over the place. Like, there's a scene with Chris and Barbara on horseback just going around the estate. I liked that music. It's actually like a song with a vocal track. Then later on, Magda is like dancing in front of the portrait, which is like a classical piece, like a very intense classical piece. I really liked that as well. But this Blu-ray has some audio problems. Like, the music is seems overpowered. The dubbing, it almost sounds like someone was playing it off something and then recorded it. It's very sharp. It just sounds off, and it can make it very hard to understand certain characters. So that was kind of distracting. But the picture quality, I can't complain about. It looked decent. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of interesting cinematography to go along with it. Oh, and also, while at the estate, Catherine falls ill. She has like a malfunctioning heart, so any kind of excitement will kind of put her out. She'll have to rest in bed. But at one point, Barbara does seduce Chris. The gardener spies on them, and then the next day, we have Naked Girl up in the park. So yeah, all of that happens before we get to the title event. But before I go any further, I will say that the climax is actually fairly exciting. It does kind of drag at some points, kind of like the whole movie. This is one of the more boring Giallo films I've seen. But, and I will say the motive for the killer is kind of interesting. It just plays out not that interesting, like, especially because Robert Hoffman doesn't really, he's kind of bland in his role. But if you have to see every Giallo film, then sure, pick it up. I definitely would put this at the top of the list to check out. There's almost any other one on my Giallo playlist I would put above it. Is it the worst one with Rant next to it? No, I would put this above Seven Deaths in the Cat's Eye. I would put this above The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave. I would at least put those above it. Probably put it above The Card Player. Yeah. Don't go out of your way to see it. It's pretty textbook, and the only really good things about it would be Adolfo Celli and his performance, some of the music, and I'll say the third act. The third act was enough to keep me interested. I just don't know if the boring buildup was worth it. So with that, I'm going to get into spoilers. There is a good foreshadowing moment where Adolfo Celli is with the family after Barbara has been found dead in the park of their estate. They're all out on the balcony. And he's trying to say, he's talking to Magda. And he says, maybe your husband's being blackmailed, and starts hinting that maybe he's a war criminal. Because he talks about some potential history of serving in Berlin and maybe someone's blackmailing him. But she kind of rebuffs that. And he goes to lean against the railing and he says it's very loose and wobbly. So if you've seen enough Giallo or even horror films, you know what that means. Someone's going to go through it. But the gardener is arrested because shortly after the maid is killed, her throat is slit. But like most of the deaths in this, it's either off screen or you don't really see much, just a little bit of blood. I was kind of confused by the killer's soliloquy in front of the portrait about Barbara and the maid. I took it as the gardener did it because the gardener was watching Barbara have sex with Chris. But then, Chris is with Catherine. She gets a phone call, and we see there's a woman's hand with painted fingernails hitting play on this recorder with the whispery, "You're never going to get away with it" voice. And then she faints again. Magda finally loses it. She sees a hallucination of her dead husband. She runs out on the balcony, leans against the railing, and we knew this was a decent shot. From the driveway, we see the railing fall, and the dummy stays upright against the railing, and it does like a flip, so it lands, body down, railing on top of it. I thought that was decent. Eventually, it comes out. The person that's been doing it is Chris. He took the case. Well, he killed the guy because in the very beginning, during the Berlin scene, he was the young boy in the house that was blown up. He survived. And he wanted to kill the man and destroy everything, close to him and that he was worth. So yeah, because of the audio, I couldn't really make out what he was saying, and there's no subtitles about like Barbara and her death being a role in it or not. But while he's going on his tirade, and he's wearing a wig and a fake mustache. It wasn't a hallucination. He was drinking with Magda, and then he kind of faked being sick or drunk, so he ran off. And then he put this disguise on and was coming towards her. She's already drunk and losing her grip, so she thought it was her husband when she fell off the balcony. So we see the reveal of him taking the wig and the mustache off. He talks about how he was the boy and the guy's a Nazi war criminal and he wanted to kill and destroy him. Catherine's coming downstairs and she hears him. And then when she confronts him, she takes out her gun, starts firing, but Chris is laughing and, opens up his jacket. He kind of figured she might do that, so he switched her bullets with blanks. And the excitement caused her heart to give out, and she died. I think that was a little bit of convenience, that he anticipated that. So, you know. But then we see, it then transitions to another POV shot of the same House of Horrors, and we hear voices of, oh, I deserve more money than that. I killed. I should get more money. It's a woman's voice. I did forget to mention there is this blonde woman from the beginning when Chris and Catherine first go out. She's the waitress. And it shows that Chris and this woman know each other. I think it's supposed to imply that they once had a thing. But she was the one helping him out. She was the one with the recorder, the painted nails that hit play over the phone. He kind of shafted her on her half. He didn't want to pay her as much. So then when the ride stops, she looks behind her, and Adolfo Celli and, you know, the elderly guy, I think from the insurance company, or because they keep saying your company, so I thought it was the insurance company. It could have been, you know, because there was a sergeant that was following Catherine around throughout, like, the first act, who I think was supposed to be a red herring as well. But, so they chase her around the amusement park. She gets her foot caught on the track of the roller coaster. We see the POV, and it cuts really quick, and then we just see, like, this with a little bit of blood. Not much. That could have been a good final kill with some showy effects, but no. And then, you know, we see that Chris is still in the tram car, but she shot him because he was underpaying her for her part. So he died same way the guy he killed did. And then we get some exposition about her and that from Celli, and that's the end of the movie. So it does have some interesting twists. It's not executed in the best way. And, you know, it is kind of a shame that even though the title's accurate, it's really just a small pawn in the overall case. And it happens almost an hour in. This is one of the more boring Giallo films, as textbook as it is. And I don't think that's what makes it boring. I've reviewed a bunch of by the numbers, run-of-the-mill Giallo films that I really enjoyed. This one just, other than Celli, maybe Magda for some parts, none of the actors really had any charisma or really anything interesting about them. Some of the music, like some of it was so high-pitched it sounded almost like a xylophone. And it was kind of grating sounding. But yeah, the music when they're riding horseback and when Magda is dancing in front of the portrait, I really like that music. But yeah, and okay, so it's a survivor of this war criminal, which even during his soliloquy, he said the reason why the guy used a bomb was to make it look like the family was killed in a raid. So it's like he kind of killed with, I don't know. There's more layers to it. It has its intrigue, it's just not executed the best way. So yeah, definitely not one of the best Giallos. Might even be a contender for my bottom 10. But it would be kind of high up on the list, you know, like 10 or 9 or something. Because there were some things I liked, just not a whole lot. And there are worse ones. But that's 1972's Naked Girl Murdered in the Park. And I hope you like this review. And, you know, I haven't done a lot of rants for Giallo films. So it's still pretty good for the genre. But stay tuned for more Italian horror and Giallo films as I continue this marathon. Thank you for watching.